Going live. There it is. We are live. Welcome to Bono's Health. I'm joined by the wonderful ex-CIA agent, Michele Rigby Assad, and we're talking about her upcoming new book launching a few days from the recording of this, Get Off the X. And sorry, I have this printout, and I got my little notes there. January 14th, 2025, we're launching Get Off the X. Michele Rigby Assad. How are you today, Michele?
I'm awesome. Bo, how are you?
Doing well. We got snow over here.
Woo!
I assume you run around and you're not stuck in Florida. So it's not like you haven't seen snow in a while, but
Right. Yeah, no snow here, but we've got crazy winds and it's cold actually for Florida.
for Florida. It was literally 3 degrees here this morning as I was walking my dog. It was 3 degrees.
I don't even know what that feels like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you spend most of your career in the Middle East, for those who don't know you. And again, generally not a very cold place. So
That's right.
not a lot of snow. Although I guess up in maybe like Afghanistan mountains, you get a little bit of that.
Yeah, when we were in Iraq, it was really cold and there was a little bit of snow a couple days, but yeah, it can snow in the Middle East.
Believe it or not, folks. Not in Dubai, where I was.
Yeah, correct. It got down to 80 degrees in Dubai in the wintertime, right? Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, there's like a month in Dubai where it feels like kind of California weather-ish during the day.
And that's a glorious month. Yep.
Yeah, that's probably the best time to be there. Get Off the X coming out. We'll talk about that in a second. You introduced that concept in your first book. I got the actual hard copy here, Breaking Cover. Again, it was a big thing. Tell us some of your reflections from this. Came out quite a few years ago. Any reflections on lessons learned from that first book? Obviously, you liked it enough to write a second book. But yeah, any reflections from Breaking Cover?
Yeah, so I think what was interesting, well, I'm not an author per se, like I'm not a writer full time. So when that book came out, I had no idea how it'd be received. And I was amazed, like people absolutely loved Breaking Cover so much. And then years after that book came out, people were talking about Get Off the X, which is one of the chapters in that book. So not only did they read the book, but when I would speak from the stage and I would talk about Get Off the X, it just resonated with people. And in addition to them parroting back to me literally even years after I'd spoken, like whoever remembers what a speaker says, but they remembered, people would say, I need your help. I need to get unstuck. I need to get off the X. You've inspired me to do that. But how do I actually do it? So how do I operationalize this desire to get unstuck in my life? So that really is the motivation for Get Off the X book number 2.
Book number 2. You want to? I don't want to butcher it. Do you want to simplify the concept of getting off the X for the listener?
Sure. So it's actually a phrase. Get off the X is referring to how to respond if you're ever ambushed by criminals or terrorists. And the concept is that the X is the site of the attack. And your best chance for survival is to fight the freeze response. We all have the fight, flight, or freeze response. You have to do everything you can to push through that fear to move off the site of the X to try to stay alive. So I went through this counter ambush training multiple times in the CIA because we kept getting sent to war zones and other dangerous places. And so I realized, though, after all of this experience, that Get Off the X was really good way to think about getting out of your comfort zone. How to not get stuck in your life, but just doing the same thing every day. And how easy it is as human beings to just be uncertain or fear, or not act because of fear of intimidation or memory of failure. But man, all the meaning and purpose in life can be found when you get off that X, when you force yourself to move and you do hard things.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just saying, I had the audio book, and I just want to throw folks that I don't know. Books come with an explicit rating, but there's some graphic stuff in there. I was kind of walking the dog, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's. I mean, I understand what it is. I feel like it was a little more almost graphic, and I don't know if that was again an intentional choice compared to Breaking Cover, where you talk a little more of the it feels like Breaking Cover is a little more CIA, trying to talk about your experience there, and then Get Off the X is a little bit more this motivational concept and
Yes.
you're just trying to apply it in these different contexts. And again, there was a little more, you describing the car crash, for instance, was listening to it was intense. So I just want to give folks that don't listen to it with your, teenagers or young children.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, it was an intense experience in the real world, I tell
I
you.
bet. I
Oh my
bet.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
So you're right. So Breaking Cover's a memoir. If people want to hear all the crazy cool stories about CIA life and what it's like to deal with terrorists and all that really cool psychology of espionage, that's your book. If you want to, do something cool with your own life, get unstuck, move yourself forward, get off the axis for you, right?
Yeah, and as a parent, I have a 2-year-old. I do a few dad groups and parenting things, and I'm always listening to parenting books. And I have to say, Get Off the X, probably not the market you were going for, um, and outside of the explicit stuff, I think there's a lot of awesome lessons to be like, this is what I want my child to understand. It's another, and I've heard you reference it in your book as well, of the growth mindset. Carol Dweck, I assume, is where that comes from. But yeah, that concept of growth mindset. And just those are the things of like, understand what situation you're in, either continue with it and be okay with that, or choose a better path. And those are one of those lessons that as I only have a 2-year-old now and thinking about how to raise him into a mature, productive member of society, all these goals that we have for our children. Thinking about, hey, this is a great resource. Where I don't know if I assume you did not think of it as a good parenting book, but but
Well, in one
but
sense, it is, and I'll tell you why. Because I've dealt with so many young people who want me to mentor them and help them find their path and their career and all of that. And so, and just looking at society writ large, Bo, as we all know, the younger generations have been fed this diet of if it hurts, quit.
mhm,
And they're getting it from every direction. And social media is full of this narrative. You don't have to do hard things. You either find a hack or you don't do it. So this muscle of perseverance has not been developed in the younger generations. And this book, honestly, it addresses that. Because if you think that it's easy to do meaningful things, then you're going to quit before you get there.
yeah.
You have got to hang in there long enough for the cool things to happen in your life. Like you have to be willing to be in the trenches. And there's just like no hack. It's just doing hard stuff. So in that sense, yeah, it's a great parenting
Yeah.
tool.
No, and again, as I was reading, as I was listening to it, it was definitely like, this is that message is what am I trying to take away from this? And sometimes it's easy to just listen to books and not get much out of it, and just go along for the ride or whatever. But yeah, that was a big part of it. I'm also listening to and finishing The Coddling of the American Mind. I don't know if you've looked at
I
that one.
haven't, but man, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and there was an article that they had written that was talking about that. But yeah, they start out with the concept of what doesn't kill you makes you weaker, and just and comparing that, and they go into a whole thing with that. But they talk about, yeah, the difference in generations, the college, this new generation, these kids these days. But that's one that makes me think of. And the other big one for me, and I've gotten the pleasure to hear Seth Godin speak. Thanks to your sister, Julie, is at 2 Sigma. Seth Godin wrote The Dip, which is kind of hanging out there long enough to get to that point where you finally see it all pay out or pay off. Or he also talks about knowing when to, cut ties and move on. And again, you give some awesome examples throughout the book, and being 36 years old and saying I'm too old to start a new career, and at the same time, what reframing that to better advantages. And again, to say no, I have advantages because I'm 36, and
Yeah.
compared to all these other young bucks in here, I know what I want. I'm more mature, all that good stuff. Even we see that with parents. I became a parent at 39. A lot of people talk about having that maturity to deal with that, having a little bit more financial flexibility to all these different benefits of being a little wiser, a little older. And at the end of the day, what I'm getting from Get Off the X, the big piece here is it's reframing and having that mindset that says you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. In simple words,
So
you can do it if you hang in there long enough.
yeah, yeah, and also, the part is don't be afraid to do things that are scary. We have to do
Yeah.
things that are scary, and I think that's a little where that again overlap of coddling of the American mind comes in. Of are we protecting our kids too much from these things versus saying like, hey, yeah, this is hard, but anything worth doing is going to be difficult. And again, if you do hard
Mm.
things, you're gonna be a little better off. The other part that I'm hearing or that I'm getting in listening to the book is be prepared for those things. You don't know what it is. If you find something you're passionate about, you went and you're interested in the Middle East. You said, hey, let me learn the language. I don't know what that's going to lead to, but let me start studying some Arabic. You learned the alphabet. And you started there. You started taking some history pieces and said, hey, maybe this is something that's going to benefit me in the long run. You don't know exactly how that's going to shape out later on. Again, you had no. I've heard you tell that story a few times of dropping your resume in the box. And them being the CIA being the only callback you got from that job fair, which is pretty exciting. But bottom line is be prepared for that moment. We don't know when that moment's coming, and just do what you can to set yourself up in those skills. So that's part of that get off the X. It's the statement there that I resonates for me is we kind of default to our training. So if your training is not
Mm.
good enough, then you're going to default to possibly not failing. That's when the person who's trained a little bit harder, a little bit better, a little bit smarter might succeed. You talk about the one ambush situation, and you didn't specify the country, redacted. I like that. It was I believe it was a South American country, maybe, or Central American country, and the four
Maybe.
folks got maybe the four
Maybe.
folks got ambushed. You mentioned they were Spanish speaking. That's all that. That's all that
Okay.
we can go off of. So that wasn't an issue. So, but yeah, the one of the four did not, without any judgment, she just being in that situation, she did not do well in that situation. They played the little Russian roulette game where they were
Mhm.
cocking the gun, and again, that's part of that explicit thing we're talking about. For anybody who wants to get the book, just be aware that that's in there. But yeah, and so that kind of sent her into that fight, flight, or freeze. She froze.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the other three folks luckily were able to continue to find a way to get out of there. And spoiler alert, they, they made it out. But yeah, so again, there's a lot of just great motivational stuff in there that I think folks can take away without giving away too much of the book. But I highly recommend it as a read overall.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm honored because I know you read a lot.
I do. I do. Uh, Constant learning, constant. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a problem. It's a problem. Um,
No, it's great. And I think just to reiterate what you said so eloquently is that so Joseph and I had spent 10 years in the CIA, and that first really dangerous posting lasted 2 years. And then we were sent that 2 years was looking over your shoulder the entire time for hostile surveillance or AK-47s trained on you. Um, I had to use my get off the X ambush training twice, at least twice, during that tour to avoid getting kidnapped. Um, and then after that 2 years, I think like I did my duty. Well, they sent us to a really decent location, and then 10 months later, surged us to Baghdad, the war zone, like during the worst part of the war. So this is now our third tour, super dangerous, getting rocketed in the green zone for a year. The hardest work I've ever done in my life was in Baghdad. And then we got sent to another hard place. And after 5 of those kinds of tours, I mean, we kept saying like, this is so hard. I don't know if I can keep doing this. And why are my friends and people who were in my training class with me at the CIA, why are they going to all these beautiful locations? They're living the good life. They're having a grand time. And we're over here like, running into bunkers and trying to avoid getting harmed by rockets exploding on the ground. But we didn't give up. And the fruit of hanging in there long enough, the fruit of that perseverance, the willingness to do hard things is that at the end of that 10-year career, the level of our counterterrorism and counterintelligence expertise was so incredible. And you just can't get that in the Parises and the Romes and the Viennas of the world. Like you can only get that in the trenches, in the war zones. So I tell people, hey, it's going to be painful. It's going to be rough. There are going to be days you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. But at the end of that is something amazing if you stick with it. And now here I am 12 years later talking about these experiences and helping to inspire the next generation. That's what you do after you've suffered for a long time and learned a lot from it.
Yeah, yeah, and we go out there, we make the mistakes so that again, hopefully people can learn from that, and hopefully it's not all mistakes, but and hope
Yeah.
I'm sure you credit the folks before you who helped you learn from their mistakes and that constant progress. That's the only way. We as a country, we as an organization, the CIA, and I did hear you recently. I was reflecting on your mafia interview. Folks can go check that out. Michael, I forgot his last name. Yeah. Reflecting on just how you kind of mentioned there, if I can pick out that little media tidbit of being a little concerned about where the CIA is. I think you called them out, and I don't want to get too far into talking politics or calling people out. But I think the one thing, and again, I'd be remiss to not ask you something here for the general public, because everyone here is ex-CIA agent in the front of the name, and it's like, oh, what does she know? What can she share? What secrets can we learn? Maybe you can tell us about the JFK assassination. I don't know. Probably not, folks. But the takeaway that I'd like to ask you about there is, I guess just as a regular citizen, a normie. Is there a name that the CIA calls us? A normie. What should we have hope? We're recording this January 8th, 2025. The administration is about to switch over. Still war going on in Ukraine. There's constant wars going on all over the world. The Middle East is still, not resolved. Go figure. Not resolved yet. Israel's still a thing. There's all sorts of different information, misinformation, disinformation. That's the world we're living in. And is there hope? Is my question. Where can folks go to get better resources, to get a little bit less rage bait? And again, not to call out Fox News. Like, I walk by, I see a Fox News thing in somebody's windows. I'm walking my dog, and I'm like, I get triggered from watching it, because they're like, New Orleans exploding bomb thing, and it's like it's a lot. So I'm just like, where can we, I've had conversations. I try to always find that middle ground, whatever, of there's like more centrist resources. Anyway, with your expertise, I guess the question is, where can a normal person like me go to get more grounded and be like, should I be worried? I'm a 41-year-old man living in Colorado. I don't know if I should reveal this information. I do not own a gun. I want to own a gun now that I'm concerned. I'm genuinely concerned. So I don't know. Maybe this gets a little dark at this point, but should I have a gun, Michele?
Oh, well, that depends on a lot of things.
I don't mean to put you on the spot like that.
Yeah, no worries. So the best resource, one of the best resources that I found, is the free press. I highly recommend the free press. I find it to be extremely well balanced. So if you want a one-stop shop media resource, that's it. Very impressed with them. I view
is that Barry Weiss?
That's Barry exactly Weiss. That's Barry Weiss. Yep. Former New York Times journalist, and she's built an incredible media outlet here that I think a lot of people from the right and the left and the center respect. So that says a lot. It's hard to achieve in this world.
And her podcast, for those out there, is Honestly. If I can get the glare out of there, you can see it outside my window there. Honestly, with Barry Weiss. And in fact, after the election in November here, they had like a little roundtable. Like, I think they recorded it a few hours after the results were like official, and they had a trans person, they had a Trump supporter, they had a very liberal type person on there, and they just all kind of were able to share those ideas. It was very refreshing to hear that. So thank you for confirming.
Absolutely.
That's an excellent resource.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I'm an eternal optimist. So even when things are going bad, I can always look at, like, there is a way forward. Here's what I recommend if it's something I know well. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to improve. And one of the things I've mentioned before is that I believe a lot of the organs of our government have become too political. particularly under the Biden administration, but it started before that. And we Americans deserve better for the CIA, for the FBI. We need, so like I served under both Democrat and Republican presidents, and I served joyfully under both of them. And that's the way it should be. We should not be political entities, but what we have are really, I can at least speak for the CIA, really bloated bureaucracy. And the world has changed dramatically since I was in the CIA. Like the way we did operations when I got in 2002 is very different than how you would carry out an operation now. And what do? You have to change your hiring, your training, how you station people. Like basically every aspect of operations needs to change. And I don't believe that it has. So we're bloated, we're bureaucratic, and we're not heading in the right direction. We don't have the right people with the right set of skills. We don't have people with the right linguistic capabilities and cultural knowledge. Like we need the best of the best. So that's the kind of hiring that you go out and strategically pull people out. You have to be very creative with cover. You have to have a whole different cover program. So it's really actually changing the CIA from the ground up is really what we need to do. And it's not even so much a function of politics as it is time and the changes that we have seen in our world in the last 10 years or so.
Do you have, again, right before we recorded, I was like, I don't want to go too political, but, and difference. Do you think the Doge situation, so I know they're not an official agency, but.
Oh, I'm very excited about it, actually.
Elon Musk and Vivek.
And the reason why is because I'm a very creative person. And even when I was in the CIA, I remember looking at things and like, why are we doing it like that? Like there's a better way to do this. And the problem was when you are creative and you are a kind of person who can look ahead and you can look over the horizon, you're really stymied by the bureaucracy and you're surrounded by there's a lot of amazing people and there's a lot of mediocre people, right? So being able to bring some people into government that are super creative, who are big thinkers, we need that. We need to be shaken up. My gosh, do we need it? So is it easy? It's going to be incredibly difficult because everyone's going to want to dig in their heels. You want to keep doing what we've always done, and it's going to be quite painful, but a lot of change does need to happen.
Yeah, I mean, again, I that's the one like silver lining. It seems like it's going to be chaos, even with RFK on the medical side and Make America Healthy Again, and now I'm like, yeah, again, let's talk about beef tallow and things like that. But the concern is, and I have one of my personal training clients here who works, she's in cancer research. And the fact that they kind of want to deregulate or really get rid of the FDA and NHS, like it's concerning that now we're going to lose some of the checks and balances, much as there's like, that's the tricky part. I'm sure you can, I'd love to hear your.
Yeah. And in fact, to underscore what you're saying. Okay. So when we went into Iraq, we liberated Iraq from Saddam Hussein, who we all agree was a horrible dictator who just squashed human rights. But in our naivete, I'm just going to say our ignorance, we axed the security services in Iraq, which he had set up. And what it created was a vacuum. And that vacuum was filled by terrorists of every stripe, Sunni, Shia, And so it is word of warning, you can't just throw an entire agency in the trash. They do important things, even if they are corrupt, even if they have massive problems. So, but there's the challenge, like, how are you going to creatively approach what needs to change without making a terrible mess of everything? Because of course we need an FDA or we need something like that. But we've got to, I don't know, it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And the concern, I think, on the, let's say the left side, let's blue team, whatever you want to call it, I think is that I want to express and just see what that does is that, yeah, again, things are going to get thrown out the window. Rights are going to get dismantled and a lot of people are going to get hurt and or die in that process. So again, we're seeing it with abortion rights right now. And again, I know that's not your expertise necessarily. But at the same time, like that's the concern of dismantling these agencies. So again, I see some of the stuff and I'm like, yeah, like we definitely have problems, especially I'm in the health space. I'm like, medicine 2.0 is great that it can, you get in a car accident, you have your story about the is it Lisa was her name?
Yes, Lisa. Yep.
Lisa in the car accident. And again, medicine 2.0 is amazing at keeping somebody alive and helping
Right.
them in that situation. But medicine 3.0 that one of my favorite folks, Dr. Peter Attia, talks about is the idea of being ahead of the curve, thinking a few steps ahead of like, hey, where do I want to be when I'm 90 years old, and having the privilege to do that, but also saying, who are those practitioners that I can look for when I'm
Exactly.
trying to do that, and
Yes.
is the government going to reward me for that? No, that's a whole different.
So no, but like to again reinforce what you said from my world, my international affairs and security issues. Um, it's like trying to marry up someone in the bureaucracy who's very creative with somebody from the new the Elon Musks of the world, whatever. You've got to have somebody that you can marry up with in the bureaucracy and partner up to see how can we move this forward in a safe manner so that you don't have a security vacuum where things just fall through the
Well,
cracks,
that's the way
right?
that's the way it feels, and I think that's the whole left, right, blue, red, whatever you want to call it. Is even talking about open borders and things like that. It's either open borders or we kick everyone out that like is not have paper. Like again, Trump promised mass deportations on day one. What does that look like? I mean, again, from what I've seen, as again just taking in stuff, it's a minimum of 1 million people, a maximum of 20 million people that they're hoping to deport. As soon as he got elected, there was stocks going up of these detention facilities in Texas and like all this stuff. And again, I don't know if I'm getting fed the wrong thing because of my algorithm. But
Yeah, I
in
know it's
terms of
easy to get
safety,
caught in these
mhm.
silos of information. That's why I try to like read a little bit of everything so that I can kind of deduce what's actually what's actually happening. But not everybody has had the experience that I've had in the world and can deduce easily and read between the lines. Like that's not an easy thing to do if you haven't been in the Middle East, if you haven't been on the ground all those years, etc. Yeah, but I'm hopeful. I think it'll be painful, but I'm hopeful that something good will come out of this. So we will see.
At the end of the day, we're going along for the ride. We don't have an option anymore, so it is what it is. I don't. The
Oh,
takeaway
sorry. You
I
know what? I'm sorry. I forgot
no,
totally what I was going to tell you. So I'll give you a really good example. If the general American public knew what the Chinese communist regime was doing on a daily basis, targeting us in the United States, your mind would explode. It's It's mind-boggling how active they are and how dangerous they are and what they're doing. Okay, so what does that mean? I'm not a Chinese expert. I don't know anything about Chinese culture. I know the Arab world. We need people who are from China or who are really well studied on China or Taiwan or similar areas who know the language and who understand the culture. We need those people in the CIA and the FBI. Now, here's the hard part. Let's be smart. China is very good at finding people of Chinese descent to target them to get them to report secret information back to them. So to work as like double agents basically and agents for the Chinese regime. So so this is what puts us in a bind because we need those people, but we know they're going to be targeted by the Chinese. So we got to get really creative about how we hire those people, what kind of cover we give them, and how we try to help shield them from the long arm of the Chinese government that says if you don't give us that intelligence, we're going to torture your family and throw them in prison. Like that's a terrible position to be in. And I actually know people on the Space Coast here in Florida. I know one gentleman that was in that position. The Chinese reached out to him and said, if you don't start reporting your engineering, your sensitive engineering data that is involved on Space Coast projects, we're going to hurt your family. He quit. That man had such integrity that he would rather quit his job than say yes to the Chinese. But a lot of people, don't have, they got to put food on the table at night, right? So we have to think of very creative ways to recruit the people we need and then try to shield them from that dangerous position. Like we got to think differently.
yeah, and hopefully there's some of that coming with the doges of it all. But well, and then why are they not hiring you, Michele? Get in there, go.
Been there, done that.
Did you? Well, all jokes aside, is it too much of a bureaucracy to fight against? And is that the question or issue there?
I think, so if I was in charge, I think what I would do was I would look at the bureaucratic structure as it is, and I would say, okay, what are the areas we should stop hiring in and kind of let them fall away, right? Like you just don't feed much money or resources into like the dying appendages in that bureaucracy while building up new structures, new entities, new covers, new ways of operating in the world. So it's not like hey, by the way, everybody loses their job overnight. You phase things off, right? So I would see it as phases. You build something new while you're letting something else come to a close. That's how I would do it.
That's the concern, though, with like an Elon Musk, is that's what he did with Twitter, right? He came in there, signed the ink isn't even dry, and he's like, "Hey, 90% of you're gone, like today." I don't know the exact numbers, but that's the fear, I think. And luckily, the Doge organization, to my understanding, is not an official organization. It's just a whatever consulting
advisory
board or what have you. But so yeah, hopefully they're not the ones making the decisions directly. But it's again, it's a little concerning, scary, and you mentioned that a lot of these agencies became politicized. Again, for the general public, it's I think seeing like some of the, again, maybe sound bites, maybe the silos of it all, but seeing some of the things Trump has promised, said, is scary. He said, I'm going to, he got this, he owns the Supreme Court. He basically has complete immunity in his legal cases. So it's a little scary what he chooses to do. He came out, there's quotes of him saying, I am going to, there's nothing again that's going to stop him from killing his enemies using a U.S. government agency. Like, I don't know if that was taken out of.
Just to be fair, I would offer that a lot of people on the other side think that's already been happening the other direction. Not that I'm not saying it. I think nobody should be doing that. That's very dangerous. But I think that I have seen also the other side doing that for the last 4 years. But that tends to get underreported, I would say, or reported in certain circles and written off as, far right weirdo stuff. So, but we have to do our best to try to find that center area. And those of us who are more moderate in our approach, you just hope the right people have the ears of the people in charge who can feed them more moderate views and more reasonable approaches.
Yeah. Hopefully. And that's coming back to get off the X to your book. We bring it back to that again concept of what can we do as individuals? Are there things we could be doing to prepare for whatever that is? The one takeaway I had that I'll try to continue to voice, and folks have definitely honed in for me, is at least do what you can in the local community. Vote in your local elections, all that kind of stuff. Again, you might not be able to control the presidential elections. You can certainly vote there too. But again, I'm in Colorado, although it is a bit of a purple state in reality. You're wearing your purple, I see as well. It still feels like, and again, living most of my life in New York, same thing. It felt like my vote was never going to matter in a presidential election. Just it's going to go blue. I guess the last time, and this was, you mentioned Barry Weiss, and honestly, there was another excellent episode shortly after the election that looked at the last time the Democratic Party was definitely in a mess, as it seems it is currently. Was in the 70s. Was it when Reagan won? And Reagan won, I believe it was Reagan, won like New York, California, went Republican, which is mind-boggling to think of, I think, in this day and age. But yeah, it wasn't too far away in terms of everything going on. And it took Bill Clinton coming in to be like the Democratic Superman hero, whatever, to bring some semblance to the party and the balance of this two-party system. Anyway, going off a tangent there. But that's the get off the X piece, where it comes back to me of what I've heard in the book and coming back to, control what you can. be prepared for whatever the thing is. That's where, again, I say, like, should I get a gun? And to protect my family, to be ready for this. Everyone talks, again, it might just be a lot of, hopefully, talk of civil war. But again, another pandemic happens. We saw it under Trump's last presidency. It was a bit of panic. And again, was it worse because he was there? That's not for us to say. Theoreticals, hypotheticals, but it was definitely a wild time. And with some of these restrictions or limitations or changes in policy, again, the way he responded, again, I don't know how you feel about, not to keep putting you on that spot of left versus right or what have you, but I think that's my concern as somebody who has a 2-year-old who has a family to protect is in the event of another worldwide pandemic. His response last time was not great. A lot of the agencies were not great, not to just throw Trump under the thing. And again, it's never up to the one person in charge. The president is not that powerful. People don't seem to understand that when they say, complain about gas prices. And I understand the politics of it. Everyone's like, eggs and bacon are more expensive. It's like, it's not really Biden's fault. I don't know. Like, you can't say it's Biden's policies. In fact, Biden we seem to do better than most of the world in these recessions that we've seen these last few years in terms of economic impact. But at the end of the day, sure, if your bacon's twice as expensive as 4 years ago, I understand you're going to vote for the other guy. That's just a historical fact. But my concern or question back to you about getting off the X and being prepared in our own right is, what, again, hope should we have or again, things that if things start happening or there's more chatter or there's more talk. You mentioned in again that your mafia episode that there was a lot of kind of 9/11 pre 9/11 talk. So again, a little scary to hear that from someone who knows more than the rest of us of a lot of chatter and things. And I did want to ask you, I don't know if it's still a thing, all the freaking drones over New Jersey, like the government knows what's going on. We shouldn't be worried about that. That's all. Like, I'm sure something.
So as a national security expert, the thing that bothered me, and I think the rest of the United States of America, was the government's statement was, we don't know what they are, but it's fine. There's no threat. Well, okay, we all weren't born yesterday. You can't, if you don't know what something is, you can't say it's not a threat. We're not stupid. So I think that was super irritating. So here it is for me. Like, if it's government, it's our government, and they're carrying out exercises with new technology, just acknowledge this is US government technology. That's all we can say for now. Everything is fine. Like, we're all fine with that. Okay, we just need to know that that's what it is. Now, if that's the Chinese UAVs coming off of ships off of the eastern seaboard, and we know that our governments have not been honest with us because we had that Chinese balloon that came over the entire United States, and the administration did nothing about it until there was a public outcry that was like, what the heck? So because we lack that confidence in what the government's telling us, I think that's upsetting people because we're like, we don't know what to think. So we all have a right to either know our government knows what it is and it's us and it's okay, or we need to investigate what that is and we need to figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. There was the one congressman that said, like, it was from the mothership, the Iranian mothership off the eastern seaboard, and I think the White House press secretary came out and was like, that's not right. We don't know, but then but also we don't know what it is. But
it's fine.
Don't worry about it. But don't worry about it. But also it's not that. But we know what it is. But we don't know what it is. But
here's another thing to consider: the cartels. Like, I haven't seen much about this, but the cartels use every kind of technology there is to push product from point A to point B. Who knows? Are the cartels also using UAVs and unmanned vehicles and drones in order to get product across the border and to different locations? I don't know. It's something to be aware of. That's also an option.
Cool. I'm more scared now than ever. No, that's not the takeaway.
No, and I think it's very easy for people to get overwhelmed when it feels like life is chaos and people go down the rabbit hole of the social media, and the next thing you know, they just feel suddenly completely demotivated in life. And so what Get Off the X is really trying to do, what I'm trying to do with this book is to say, If you are stuck, you just graduated college, you're an empty nester, you just retired, you're mid-career and you're no longer satisfied by what you're doing. You just had kids and your life changed because you're a new parent. There are all these stations along life where we feel absolutely and completely incapable of moving ourselves forward. You're never truly stuck. And so this book is really trying to get people to be inspired to recognize when you suddenly can't get out of bed in the morning and you're not really sure why you're getting out of bed in the morning, to operationalizing your life as if you were a CIA operative. Because people say all the time to me, man, I think in another life, I could have worked for the CIA. I could have been a cool undercover operative. And I say, yeah, you probably could. Like to most people anyway, I'm like, yeah, you probably could. Now, what if you took that sense of adventure and that sense of like, there's this other side of me that's super adventurous, that, wants to be risky, wants to do cool things. Why don't you tap into that now? Like it's never too late. And so that's what the book is trying to provide the methodologies to help people do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an awesome message to leave off on. And you do shout out our mutual friend, Jenny Blake, in the book of if change is the only constant, maybe we should get better at it.
Yes.
And be
Right?
prepared for it. So yeah, and she has a few books, I believe now. She has two or three, at least two.
Three. Yeah.
Three.
Yeah.
So Jenny's got three, you've got two, and Julie's only got one. And I've only got a chapter coming out. I need a whole book to keep up with anyone. And my wife does have her book, so that's the thing.
Yes, there you go.
Anyway, a lot of books. It's book publishing is a whole world, and yeah. I applaud you for going through that process. The audiobook, I highly recommend for folks who take in audiobooks. Michele has an amazing voice. You even do some nice impressions in there, which are great. And I'm listening at 1.8x, and it still is excellent. I'm sure I lose a little nuance listening that fast. But that's the only way I get through as many books as I do, is listening at 2x, one at 1.8x. Yours might be one I want to slow down the rest of the way. I was just trying to catch up before our call here. And President Obama's and Michelle Obama's books also. President Obama was probably the most one of the best orators that you kind of want to take in at normal speed. I think it's a disservice to folks who are excellent orators to speed through their presentation. But yeah, there's a lot of folks that I listen to. And again, when it comes to a lot of this political arena stuff that we've kind of touched on, is also sometimes I feel like we got to slow it down and yeah, be able to really absorb what's being said, which you also mentioned and Get Off the X of your, your interview with a fellow that happened to be a double agent. And again, not to give away all the secrets here, but you kind of took in, would you say 8 hours of data? It was one of the longest interviews you ever did. And it took you, not everyone listened to your hunch of there's something going on here. And it takes a lot to synthesize that data. So again, in this world of overstimulation, over data, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down anytime soon. We're getting this fire hose of information at us all the time. You got to really figure out what resources do you take in. And again, I do take in the free press, and I probably need to do a better job even of that. As entertaining as Jon Stewart or John Oliver are, and funny, and make it a little funny, they probably aren't the best resources to get all my news.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Anyone can pre-order the book. You can get the audio book, which Michele didn't even know. You can get it now, but the physical book launches January 14th. I have that written there. So this coming Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, for anyone listening to this later. But go on Amazon. I do have a link to the pre-order Amazon in my show notes. Wherever you guys are watching, listening, should be there somewhere, here, there, anywhere. Any other places? I have your website as well, MicheleRigbyAssad.com. Very nice website. And any other things you want to plug or promote or tell people how to find you?
Oh, you got it. Pretty much anything. If you're interested in learning more about me or my speaking or my corporate consulting, it's all on the website. So.
One person asked if the book is available yet on Spotify. I didn't know books were available on Spotify at all.
I don't know.
I believe you can
I
purchase. I purchased it on Audible.
yeah.
So I don't know that Spotify has books, but thank you for the question,
Yeah,
JC.
I didn't even know that actually. So yeah, maybe I'm behind the times.
There are audiobooks on Spotify. I don't know. I can search it here live in front of everyone. I don't know. Let's see if you're on Michele Rigby Assad on Spotify. Going live, folks. We're going live. Um, your episode with me comes out. Your Breaking Cover audiobook is available there. That's
Well,
interesting.
okay. No,
Yeah,
thank you for looking that up.
you do have to buy it, I suppose. But yeah, a lot of your podcasts are available that you've done. That is a good way. I've never actually thought to do that. That's a really good way to see all of like your podcast episodes.
Yeah,
What are you fighting for with Franklin Covey on leadership?
Franklin
That's one of
Covey.
the
Yeah.
episodes you did in May 24, 2024. There's a lot of episodes. You did a lot of episodes. So, but
I've
yeah,
done a lot. Yeah, a
thank
lot
you,
of podcasts.
JC, for
Yeah.
pointing that out. Yeah, it's locked. Your CIA one, your Breaking Cover is locked on Spotify. I don't know what it asked me to buy it.
Okay.
You can't buy audiobooks in the app, but titles you've already purchased through Spotify can be listened to here. Okay. Good to know.
Okay.
Thank you, JC. I learned something. If that's the only
Me
thing I
too.
learned, no, we learned a lot. I learned a lot. I hope folks got at least 1% better today. Go check out Miss Michele. Is there like a title other than Miss for an ex-CIA agent? Is it like, no?
Madame. No, I
Madame.
don't.
On that, Madame Rigby Assad. On that note, you guys get 1% better. Happy 2025. Go get her book. It's a really great listen or read.